So if you heard the case where the full panel of the Ninth Circuit chose not to rehear the panel of three below, it looks like it's a big win for Donald Trump. It's not. Let me tell you why it's not necessarily a big win, and it doesn't necessarily mean a death knell from Oregon either. So Oregon, people criticize the way I say Oregon. So if you want to hear that, stay tuned. Listen here. First of all, let's do some background. It's easier to go sequentially because it could get confusing. So Donald Trump does this thing where he sends barely trained, unfit Goombas that ICE and Department of Homeland Security hired, including some border security, to blue cities, and then they start causing trouble and they start roughing up and just start being aggressive, not to just the criminals, to like random people. So in response to that craziness, the people protest. When the people protest peacefully, Donald Trump sends troops to assist, saying that the local governments aren't capable of managing the protests, or the local governments aren't protecting the ICE facilities. That's what's going on in Portland and Chicago, and he needs to send these troops to protect the DHS and ICE agents, who, by the way, are being overly aggressive and are causing the trouble. Like, they come in to cause trouble. It's a pattern. Crazy, right? So Governor Newsom, in response to that, files a lawsuit, and Judge Murphy is assigned to the case, and he says, while the case continues, because when you're doing a case, you need the depositions, you're going to do document exchange, you have hearings, it could be a long time. So there's this tool called temporary restraining order, or a temporary preliminary injunction, which seems that more likely not I'm going to win. So because I'm most likely going to win, I want you to just pause this unlawful action temporarily. And so the judge said yes. So he stopped Donald Trump from federalizing, which means turning California, the National Guard troops, into federal troops, so he can deploy them to help with domestic management of protests. And Governor Newsom's like, we don't need it, we got this. So the judge agreed. Then Donald Trump appealed that temporary, remember, it's a temporary pause. The main case still continues. Donald Trump appeals that temporary pause to the next level, which is the Court of Appeals. As I said before in previous videos, the United States divided up into different circuits. The California circuit is 9th. This area that includes Illinois is the 7th. The Texas is 5th. The Maryland's 4th. The New Hampshire area is 1st, like that, and so forth and so on. So for the 9th circuit, which includes Oregon, includes California, by the way, you get just 3, and after you get the 3, you can ask for the full panel. So fortunately for Donald Trump, he drew 2 Trump-appointed judges and 1 Bill Clinton-appointed judge. And sidebar, Chief Justice Roberts of the United States Supreme Court said there's no such thing as Clinton judges or Biden judges or Bush judges or bullshit. Yes, there is, because clearly this is an example of it. So anyway, I digress. So the 2 judges say they gave Donald Trump deference. They say, oh no, he's okay. They give him all the deference. And the dissenting judge was like, you lost your mind? Anyway, so Gavin Newsom said, you know what? The Ninth Circuit is pretty liberal. I'm going to appeal to the full panel, which he did. Unfortunately, yesterday, the full panel said, you know what? We're not going to overrule them for now. Again, remember, this is just temporary. The full case goes on. I'm going to tell you about the full case. The full case actually is stopped because of the freaking government shutdown. Yeah, that's why I say, let me take this piece by piece. And then I'm going to tell you a little bit about Oregon. All right. So Senior Circuit Judge Marcia Berzon, writing on behalf of her and 10 other judges on that panel, which includes Chief Judge Mary Murguia. So 11 of them, on behalf of them, she says in her opinion, this case presents an issue of gravest consequences, the peacetime deployment of military troops in American cities. And then she says, she warned that the lower court was inviting presidents now and in the future to deploy military troops in response to all kinds of commonplace, short-lived domestic disturbances whose containment conventionally fall to local and states. So essentially, you're opening up a bag of rags. They're criticizing the 2 Trump-appointed judges who overruled the Clinton-appointed judge and giving Donald Trump deference. He's not entitled to deference. So, yeah. So that's why I say, when I say that's coming from 11 people. So that tells you, when this case gets up on substance, what do you think is going to happen? All right. Now here's a kicker. The 12th judge, Judge Ronald, was like, you know what? I know you guys say all that stuff, which is good and gravy, but you shouldn't have paused it. Why? He says, because y'all should have listened to a full panel, because he said that the potential for executive overreach and the likelihood of similar disputes could occur. Like, y'all should have reined this in. So that means 12 of them realize it's bad in the Ninth Circuit. I told you it's a liberal judges, so so this is just a temporary thing. So I know the media and everybody's like freaking out on it. So pump the brakes. All right. And now we'll get to you. So it continues, but here it is. It's paused. So the government was supposed to reply to, we're in a proceeding. They had their reply brief due to something due on the 10th, right? October this past 10th. So they stipulated, meaning all the sides said, you know what, we're going to give the government until October 31st. Why? Because the government shut down. Department of Justice has no more money. So until the 31st, they're not even going to reply. So the case has been paused. The problem is, like, the troops are still federalized. But the good thing is, while they're federalized, meaning that they're deployed, the judges entitled to this said this. The judge is hearing the case of Judge Breyer on September 2nd. He saw some stuff. And he said, you know what? He told the military, this is the military using domestic law enforcement. They're not doing this right. So he paused that. He says, on the statewide basis, you can federalize the troops and they can be there, but they can't be participating in local law enforcement of protesters. And that's on the entire California. And what did Governor Newsom do? You probably read or heard, or look it up if you haven't. Governor Newsom started taking those troops that are already federalized and started having them do like domestic projects like fixing up and working food banks and stuff. So he's keeping them busy. He said, well, y'all here.
Amanda, the California National Guard will not be acting as law enforcement. Instead, they will be on a humanitarian mission to support food banks across the state. Local food banks are urging the public to donate as they project an influx in need they're not prepared for. It's an urgent deployment of the National Guard, but this time to food banks across the state.
You know, food insecurity is higher now than during the COVID pandemic.
Governor Gavin Newsom announced the official deployment of California National Guard to support food banks statewide.
Let me keep y'all busy. Though they're technically in control of Donald Trump because he federalized them, but Governor Newsom was like, all right, go manage some food banks. So yeah, so that's what's going on. The case continues. Again, it's not necessarily a loss. Now, as to Oregon, because someone said, oh, this might impact Oregon but in the Oregon case, the judge, Karine Emergott in Portland, Oregon, had two orders. One order, she told Donald Trump, you can't federalize these troops, but you can bring the troops, but you can't federalize them. Then Donald Trump took already federalized troops, meaning like National Guard troops in California and some National Guard troops in Texas, and made them federal and sent them to Oregon. And in a separate order, she said, okay, that's fine. They can stay, but they can't leave base. Because right now, from what I'm looking at, it's okay. They don't necessarily need you guys. It's not the same situation. And this is why it may be different because, of course, the Trump administration is appealing to the Ninth Circuit as well, again. And right now, I think it was like he drew that two Trump to one like Democratic judge, which is interesting. He keeps lucking out. And because it's been appealed, and according to this person, that they're not going to get a full rehearing. But again, the same thing, just like the Portland case, just like the same thing with the Portland case as with the California case. These are all temporary pauses while the main cases continue. And I'm not quite sure it's a similar situation, but it's possible that for the same reason that the Los Angeles case is paused because the Department of Justice ran out of money because of the government shutdown. The Oregon case also that Judge Emergott is looking at may be paused because the government ran out of money. So we're still waiting. But again, the key thing you need to know is that 12 out of the 13 judges say it looks like an overreach and looks like it's too much. So what do you think is going to happen ultimately? So yeah, so it's not necessarily bad. So wait. I hope that's helpful for you. There's another challenge in Chicago. There's a lot more, and that's at the Seventh Circuit. Actually, that's gone up to the Supreme Court. I talked about it in a previous video, or I'm going to talk about it. If you don't know me, I'm JJ Legal. I'm in the dockets. I help people understand the lawsuits filed against the Trump administration and those the Trump administration filed against others, to give you beyond the headlines and give you things like this, the nuances that you're not going to get from the main media, or you're not going to get from other places. So each one teach one. Share this with everyone, that it's not necessarily as bad as it looks. Anyway, if you want to get my hat, each one teach one, you can get it from my shop. If you're watching this on TikTok, this beautiful hat, it's beautiful, it's down low.